Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Welcome to another lecture, and in today's class we are going to begin with a grammar topic, the name of which is voice. Now we all know what we are talking about. We are talking about the active and passive voice. So in this class, I am going to teach you all the rules that are to be kept in mind when changing a sentence from active voice to passive voice. But before we move on to the rules, it is very important for us to understand what is an active voice and what is a passive voice. So what is an active voice? First of all, now active voice is that wherein the action is performed by the subject. So when the subject is performing some action, that sentence is said to be written in active voice. For example, if I say, Rahul is playing football. So, who is my subject in this sentence? My subject is Rahul, and Rahul is the one who is performing the action. What is the action which Rahul is performing? He is playing football. So, when the subject is performing some action, that sentence is said to be written in active voice. Now, what is passive voice? Passive voice is that sentence in which action is expressed. The action expressed by the verb is received by the subject. So now the subject is not the performer of the action but is the receiver of the action. The subject is not performing an action, rather the subject is receiving the action. For example, the same sentence as we have written above, Rahul is playing football. When I change this sentence to passive voice, the sentence becomes, football is being played by Rahul. Now, where in the first sentence my subject Rahul was performing the action, in the second sentence my subject now goes to the end first of all and is receiving the action. It says it is being played by Rahul. So this is what the difference between an active voice and a passive voice is. In active voice, the action is performed by the speaker, and in passive voice, the action is received by the subject. Now, when we are talking about the active and the passive voice, the first and the most important thing that needs to be kept in mind is the rules that ought to be taken care of when teaching or when studying this topic of active and passive. So, we are going to discuss about the rules for conversion of a sentence. Now, I am going to make sure that I give you a lot of examples so that the topic is very much clear to you. So now I am going to teach you the rules for converting a sentence from active voice to the passive voice. But before we move on to the rules, it is very important for us to understand the parts of a sentence. Now, what are the parts of a sentence? If I say, Reena loves to bake cake or cakes. This is a sentence which is given to you. In this sentence, what is Reena? Reena is my subject. What is my verb? What is my action word over here? My action word is loves, which is the verb. And the rest of the sentence, or rather if I talk about what is the object, what does Reena love to bake? She loves to bake the cake. We all know that this entire part, to bake cake, this is a predicate. A sentence is broadly divided into two parts, subject and predicate. Predicate is further divided into a verb, a helping verb and an object. Let us give you more examples. If I say, Shyam plays tennis. Who is my subject in this sentence? Shyam is my subject. What is my verb? Plays is my verb. And what is my object? Tennis is my object. Another examples. Our house is, or if I say, my neighbor dances, or rather is dancing on the terrace. Who is my subject? My neighbor. What is my verb? Is dancing. And what is the object? Where is my neighbor dancing? On the terrace. Another example. Sonu eats chocolates. Who is my subject? What is my verb? Eats. And what is my object? Chocolates. So, a sentence is always divided into three parts. A subject, a verb and an object. Now, when we talk about the conversion, the first thing that we have to remember is, if I take the last example that we had written, Sonu loves chocolates. Like I told you, Sonu is the subject, chocolate is the object. The first thing that takes place when converting, when changing an active sentence to a passive sentence is the interchanging of the subject and the object. Object comes in the place of the subject now. What is my object? Chocolates. What is my subject? Sonu. So, object becomes my subject and my subject becomes my object. And what is left is my verb. The verb is going to change according to the rules that I shall be teaching you in the later part of my video. But right now, since I'm explaining this to you, so Sonu loves chocolate, which is an active voice, changes to chocolates are loved by Sonu. So, what is the first thing that we have learned? That a subject in active voice becomes an object in passive voice, and the object in active voice becomes the subject in passive voice. Besides, we always add by before my object when changing an active sentence to a passive sentence. And like I told you, the verb changes according to the rules, and the rules I am going to teach you very soon. Let us take another example. She cooks tasty food. What is my subject? She. What is my object? Tasty food. And verb is cooks. So like I told you, the subject becomes the object, object becomes the subject. So, what is my object in this sentence? Tasty food. So, it will become my subject now in the passive sentence. So, tasty food, cooks changes to is cooked. As I told you, we always add by before the object when changing into passive, and who? By her. She changes to her. So, what have we learned so far? The first thing, the only thing rather that you need to keep in mind as of now is that from active to passive when you are changing, the subject will become the object will become the subject, the tense, the verb of the active sentence will change according to the rules. We are going to read those rules. The pronouns will always change. She is a pronoun, we all know. So, she changes to her. So, such conversion of pronouns also I am going to tell you. But the only thing that is to be kept in mind is that subject becomes the object and object becomes the subject. This is the first thing that you have to do. Now, like I told you, the changes in the pronouns. Now, what conversion takes place, when changing a pronoun? I changes to me, she changes to her, we changes to us, he changes to him, they changes to them, then you remains you and it remains it. So, this table has to be kept in mind by you people when changing active sentence to passive sentence, because pronouns in active sentence will always change. So, these are the pronouns in the active sentence and this is how they are going to change in the passive sentence. So, like I told you, I becomes me, she becomes her, we becomes us, he becomes him, they becomes them, you remains you and it remains it. So, one thing is clear, we have to change the pronouns I told you and we have changed the pronouns. I have told you the rule of changing the pronoun. The second thing that we changed was our verb. So, let us talk about the changing of the verbs. The changing of verb. Let's discuss about that first. If my sentence active voice sentence is in simple present tense, then how are we going to change it? Let's see. She writes a book. This sentence is in simple present tense. My verb is writes. Now, when we have to change this to passive, what is the first thing that we have to do? Let us first always make it a habit of, just dividing it into the parts as I have told you. Subject, verb and object. So, always keep a pencil in your hand, divide it into 3 parts. Now, what is the first thing? Object becomes the subject. So, what is my object? A book. It becomes my subject now. So, a book. Subject becomes my object. My subject is she. We just did that table. What will she change into? She changes to her. So, it becomes by her. We always add by before the object. Now, how to change my verb? Whenever my verb is in simple present tense, the rule to change it is plus the third form of the verb which is written. So, how are we going to change it? Whenever my active voice sentence is in simple present tense, how do we change it to is, am, or, are plus the third form of the sentence? Let us take more examples. They drive cars. Now here my object is plural. Take care of whatever I am writing. First thing, we have to divide it into the three parts. They is my subject, drive is my verb, cars is my object. Object becomes my subject, so cars is my new subject now. They becomes my object, so they changes to them and we have to add by before it. How to change drive now? Now, like I told you, the rule is one of the helping verbs, either is, am or are is to be used plus the third form of the verb. How do we decide whether we are going to use is, am or are? Depending on my subject. If my subject is singular, we use is. If my subject is plural, we use are. And if my subject is I, we use am. Here, cars is my new subject and cars is plural. So, what am I going to write with cars? Are. I cannot say cars is driven. No. Car is driven. Cars are driven. And the third form of drive is driven. So, cars are driven by them. Let us take another example. Sohan plays cricket. Again, divided into three parts. Sohan is subject, plays is verb, cricket is object. Object becomes my subject, so cricket is my new subject. Sohan is my object, so it comes at the end, and before the object we have to write by. Now plays, which is my verb, is in simple present tense. Again, what is the rule? We have to choose one of the helping verbs, that is, am or are. What am I going to choose with cricket? Cricket is singular, so is. Then third form of the verb. What is my verb in this sentence? Plays. What is the third form of plays? Played. So plays changes to is played. So in passive voice the sentence becomes cricket is played by. So the first rule, simple present tense. If your active voice is in simple present tense, how do we change it to passive voice? By ensuring that the subject becomes the object, object becomes the subject. Then we have to look at the new subject and see whether it is singular or plural. After deciding, we choose one helping verb, which is, am or are, and then we add the third form of the verb.